Peace, peace, family. We are back again, and today we will be discussing Doechii and escaping the patriarchal prison. Right now, you may ask, what is patriarchy exactly? Right? Patriarchy is a system in where the society is dominated by men. Right? So men make all your major decisions. Men are on top of the households, and if you live in America, that's the norm, right? That's the norm. Women have just now started getting a little more freedoms and more rights, but for the existence of the country, for the most part, it's always been patriarchal ran and still is to this day, right? Now, matriarchy, right, would be a system in where it's the opposite. The women are on top and they are running the society. For in modern times, most of the societies in the world are patriarchy because they are ruled by religion, right? So in America, as you see with the MAGA movement right now, you see the resurgence of hyper what they call Christian nationalism, right? Christian nationalism, um, which again, I don't want to beat up on religion. Religion does have many great pros to it. As for example, we are celebrating Ramadan, right? And in this month, we are learning to have discipline over our urges that can be suppressed, right? Which will help us gain discipline for when the fast is over, right? We'll have great discipline in our urges, right? We'll be in control of that. So that is one example of religion being having a great purpose, right? So on the other end, everything is duality. So you have to understand this, right? Duality is in everything, even in religion. So when you think of the Quran, you're dealing with the moon, right? You see the half moon, right? Um, and then when you're dealing with the Bible, you're dealing with the Son, right? Son of Man, right? So you have to understand that it's duality for everything, just like in the film Us. In the film Us, it deal with duality, right? Your higher self and your lower self, the God in you and the devil in you, right? Now you have to understand that because although religion does have great benefits at times, religion can also be used for evil, right? So I gave you one example of religion being used for good, as in the month of Ramadan, right? However, religion has also been used to enslave, right? To enslave. Um, the transatlantic slave trade was pushed by the doctrine of discovery, which came out of the Catholic Church, right? So you have to understand that. So um, we're dealing with a religion that can give people a false presence of a hierarchy system, right? And this can be used for evil, right? So, like I say, when we hear Doechii say heterosexual men is her enemy, right? It took a lot of people off guard, but it really didn't catch me off guard because I, although I'm not the hugest fan of her music because she doesn't have a lot right now, um, she does have a growing fan base and she's very successful right now. And I believe that her being with TDE, it also helped a lot of men, heterosexual men, migrate to this, this new artist, right, which is a female. And you have to remember that Isaiah Rashad is a bisexual man and he's with TDE, right? TDE represents the hippie, right? And the hippie is a liberal, right? The hippie is a liberal. The hippie deal with the arts, right? And the arts have always dealt with gender fluidity. Now a lot of people do not understand this, and when they speak on a lot of like black men have to put on this dress in Hollywood and the arts, they don't understand that at one time during the Renaissance era, uh, women were not allowed on stage, so you deal with men that were dressed in drag, right? Dressed in dresses, playing women roles, right? Because of the patriarchal society where women couldn't even be on stage, right? So also too, when you deal with like the Renaissance before that, right? You dealing with um the era of like Leonardo da Vinci, right? This is a bisexual man, right? This is a bisexual man. Basquiat is a bisexual man. Um, so you have to dig into that. Keith Haring, you know, is a gay man, right? This is something that you have to understand. And sometimes when we deal with hip hop, we don't realize and we're gonna get back to the point, but we are still on the point. But we're dealing with how even hip hop became fashionable, right? Because I just seen Doechii with Pharrell, right? Now, and they were doing like some type of fashion. It was a fashion advertisement, right? And you have to keep in mind that um, Tupac's mother, she, it was claimed that she may have even been bisexual at times, right? So Tupac definitely even said out of his own mouth that he was around bisexual people growing up, but being amongst his mother had bisexual friends, right? This is documented, right? That's not to implicate that he was bisexual, as some haters have tried to put on him. I believe, but I believe that since he went to an art school and he was around the Panthers, and the Panthers were close to the hippies, right? The black hippies like TDE, they were open to all kinds of different personalities and different studies, right? And one of them is breaking the xenophobia of being afraid of people that are gender fluid or are bisexual or are into this or into that. You know what I mean? Because the Panthers do come out of college, right? And one thing that they do come out of the university, just like the hippies. So one thing that you have to keep in mind is that when you look at Tupac was the balance of Mayat, right? Mayat is balance, and when you look at Tupac, you're getting the Gemini, the true Gemini of hip hop, uh, the hip hop origin, right? Because even though at that time hip hop was dealing with the hyper masculinity, right? It was the hyper masculinity. Tupac was able to give you hyper masculinity to the max, right? He's busting his hammer. He ain't just rapping about it. He is busting his hammer. He's running with known gangsters, and then at the same time he's playing roles in films like Poetic Justice, where he's playing Lucky and he's showing his vulnerable side. He's making songs like Dear Mama and Keep Your Head Up, where he's catering to the women to the point where he's running with Madonna, and Madonna is so popping at the time that she's connected with European high-end fashion designers like Versace, right? Johnny Versace, who fell in love with Tupac's features, facial features, right? The jaw structure, and he wanted Tupac to come over to Europe and do walk the runway, right? Which he did. So Tupac uh, was one of the first ones to bring hyper. Well, he was one of the first ones to bring high end fashion into hip hop, the hip hop genre. People would say, what about Dapper Dan? But people have to do the knowledge on Dapper Dan. They have to understand that even though Dapper Dan is a legendary custom design maker, he was not. These were not official pieces, right? Tupac was one of the first ones, and he was the first one to get official pieces made for him. As they say, even Tupac even had Versace sneakers, right? That didn't even drop yet. You seen him with the Versace briefs on, right? That he one of the first ones that you see. And then they say Big was studying Pac so much that was one of the things that he took from him, which led to the classic line. Now it's all about Versace. You copy my style. You know what I'm saying? Because Pac was tied in with the high end designers, and you have to keep in mind that the hyper masculinity side of hip hop was aiming at Tupac and calling him gay, right? They said he got violated in prison, right? And Tupac had the nose ring. Tupac took pictures in bathtubs with gay photographers, right? Took pictures of Tupac in bathtubs, naked, covered in gold, right? Now Tupac was just comfortable with his sexuality. And Tupac was very, very studied. Tupac studied Shakespeare, so he was not in fear. He went to art school where he went to school with some gay kids and liberal kids, right? So he was not in fear as most of the hip hop community that does not have that balance and does not have that education, right? So you have to understand that, right? So yeah, so the reason why you see even so much hip hop, because I always tell people when they started seeing like, um, you know, more as hip hop got more into high end designer, you started seeing the fashion get into men wearing skirts at times, right? And men wearing purse bags, handbags, and stuff like that. This is all coming from Europe, which the arts in Europe is always been a gender fluidity community. So when you hear people talk about Balenciaga and Dior and all this, yes, as you continue to get into those type of brands, you will see men and wearing fashion that you didn't used to see when it was American dominated. The Fubu, the Fat Farms, the Sean Johns. It was more urban wear, what they would call it. But when you deal with the when you deal with the high end fashion that comes from Europe, you're dealing with gender fluidity, whether you know it or not, and that's why you see Russell Westbrook wear a dress, right? You're seeing your Odell Beckham, your Stephon Diggs, all of these men who are into that high end fashion, wearing clothing that makes Charles Barkley say, "What the hell he got on?" Right? So you gotta understand that. So many people have to understand that, and also too, as far as why men put on dresses in films, why black men do dresses in films, it does deal with that also too with the gender fluidity of the art of Europe, right? So you got to understand that, right? So now let's get back to the lesson, right? Doechii said that she was against heterosexual men, but why did she say that, right? And that's what we are here to discover, because we want to know. We don't want to attack her. We want to know. And on this page, we will go wherever knowledge takes us, right? So one thing to do that is to put on our seatbelts and be totally objective, right? Totally objective, so we can get through to understand why she says this, not to convince us to agree with her, but to understand why she said that, right? Um, so we must take out our feelings, right? Because the feelings will get in the way of getting to the lesson. So we want to just get the knowledge, right? We want to get the knowledge. So to do that, we must go on this journey of being objective and trying to understand, not trying to listen to debate, right? We don't want to listen to debate. We want to get why she said that, because it is her view and she does have the right to have that view, even if it does not make us feel good, right? We don't want confirmation bias type of knowledge. We don't want ceremony where we are told things that we want to hear. We don't want a pimp that's telling us what we want to hear, right? We want to just get the knowledge and go wherever we can take us, right? So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to get into why Doechii said that she does not like heterosexual men, and why heterosexual men are a red flag in her eyes, right? So for us to do this, we're going to start here, right? Patriarchal societies rule the world in modern times, as I said before, right? Religion being one, right? So religion being one. When you think of um, the Muslim culture, right? Like, the Muslims in America have freedoms that the Muslims in the Middle East don't have. We're dealing with the women, right? For example, the women in the Middle East have to live under what they call Sharia law, right? Sharia law, and Sharia law is a dress code for them to abide by, and if they don't, they have morality police that are Their whole purpose is to make sure that the woman is covered up 3/4 and that she's wearing a certain type of clothing, making sure that she's acting, going by the laws of the Sharia law, right? So that's one thing that American Muslims don't have to deal with versus in the Middle East, it's not like that, right? So you got to understand we're looking at a world view of how women are treated, right? And if you are an educated woman, then you know these type of things, right? So which will play into maybe your worldview, right? For why you say things like that. So even for ancient Africa, right, and even some native tribes, they were not always patriarchal, and that's why I try to tell some of the conscious brothers that feel attacked. That is that you have to understand if you do the knowledge on some of our ancient societies, our ancient civilizations, they were matriarchal, right? Or they were just even balanced, right? It was more of the European civilization style where the woman was always up under the man, right? So that's something that you have to look at too and understand that we bought into the patriarchal society and normalities, right? But it wasn't always like that historically for us. But for the most part, patriarchy does rule, and this view of the world is normalized. But what if we were a woman? As I said, what if we were a woman and we seen it through the eyes of a woman, right? Like Doechii, right? So sure, men have built great monuments, right, and engineered great creations, right, and they built societies. You can't really debate that. Men have built societies, right? Men have built uh great monuments. They built the planes. They engineered uh sky towers that stand in the sky, right? So uh they built bridges for you to drive on. So men are doing such great jobs, right? And the men feel slighted when they hear things like this because of that. But again, we don't want to deal with the facts versus the feelings because everything is duality, right? So as far as you could say men have built these societies, we could also say that men have also destroyed societies, right? It was men that dropped the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? It was men that it was hit men in World War II that slaughtered the Jewish people, right? It was men that slaughtered the people of Namibia. It was men that went into Ethiopia like Mussolini and slaughtered the Ethiopian people, right? So, so as much as you can say, well, men built this, men built that. Well, men destroyed a lot too. Men put the draft in place and destroyed many families of the poor men who went to go fight and have women back home and didn't make it back home, right? Fighting for the rich. So men have also destroyed. So that argument that men built this, men built that, yeah, but men have also destroyed almost everything they built. Men right now, as we deal with the Oppenheimer, built a bomb that a atomic bomb that now you got mad men like Putin and even our government who got nuclear weapons and at the push of a button they could destroy the whole world. Right? Men built that. So, women, you could say women didn't build this, women didn't build that, but women don't have the blood on their hands. And statistics will back these claims up, right? So, this thinking, just because young boys, this thinking has caused young boys to become way more violent, right? The fact of we built this, we built that, we built this, right? It gives off importance, right? And this is a thing that happens, and this is why when you see well, let's get rid of Black history. Let's take Black history out of the schools. The little bit that that they do teach, right? You don't understand what that does, right? So if you go to school and everything is white, whites built this, white did that, the white did that, that gives off that makes white kids subconsciously feel like, yeah, well, we built this, we built that, we built that, and we are above the other groups, right? So if we go through life and say men built this, men built that, men built that, then that also gives off the superiority complex that men are above women because they have built this, right? So it's a dangerous complex when you teach like that, right? And when you talk with the arrogance that you built this and you built that, it diminishes uh, and devalues others, right? Even if you don't mean for it to, and it also does something subconsciously to the mind where you start to feel above their counterpart, right? So by the age of 14, men, young boys, and young girls take a big turn, right? By the age of 14, violence amongst the boys just rises, right? Just rises by the age of 14, right? And young boys begin to become more violent. And I would argue a lot of that deals with the brainwashing of media, the brainwashing of religion, and the brainwashing of living in a patriarchal society where you feel the need to always show your masculinity, right? To show that you are the toughest, right? To win that argument, the alpha male syndrome, right? Join a gang, start a gang, see who's the toughest, right? And this all deals with the ego, right? So the ego is the man's biggest enemy to his own self, is his own ego, right? So by 14, the boy develops an ego, right? And then he begins to take on that ego, which leads him to darker places, right? And the woman doesn't, and that's why she does not end up taking on this, because the man feels it's a man's world, and I'm supposed to have this, I'm supposed to do that, I'm supposed to, you know what I mean? And if he doesn't, he feels less, right? The young boys in the streets robbing and doing all this because of their ego. I don't want to take a job at McDonald's because that's embarrassing, right? To my ego, right? I'd rather sell drugs. I'd rather do this off the ego, right? So the ego is the antagonist of the man, which makes him the antagonist of the woman, right? So we're gonna look at the film Poor Things, right? Poor Things was a great film. Emma Stone was in it, and she won a lot of Oscars on it last year. It was well deserved, right? This film highlights a woman named Bella who is trying to escape the male patriarchy prison, and it's a sci-fi film, but it deals with realities, right? And sci-fi is great because you can get very creative, right? You can get very creative and deal with things that aren't necessarily true, and that's the power of art, right? The almighty pen, right? I can draw however I want to, right? That's the beautiful thing of it. So even though this is a sci-fi film, it's filled with many lessons, just like The Matrix and just like in everything, everywhere, all at once, right? These sci-fi films opens up a place where you can go as the creator to places you couldn't go if you weren't dealing with sci-fi, and that's why the sci-fi genre usually has the most knowledgeable films, right? Where we can take lessons from. So I think that's something that more black films should get into, right? Get Out was one. Jordan Peele, we think of Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele always gives us one because he deals with the sci-fi and makes it a sci-fi horror, and he's able to go into places that he wouldn't be able to go to if he just dealt with like a film that deal with reality, right? Um, They Clone Tyrone was another great one where it was a sci-fi and you were able to pull a lot of jewels out of it because it did deal with the sci-fi. So the sci-fi genre is a genre that more black creators should get into because we are able to pull some of our best work out of it because there's no limitations, right? It doesn't have to be real. We can put it in and make the messages of it. So anyway, the film Poor Things, right? This film highlights a woman named Bella who is trying to escape the male patriarchy prison. In her first life, she had an abusive, controlling husband, and as the film starts, she jumps to her death. Right? It was so bad in that controlling household that even with even being pregnant, she jumped to her death. Right? Only to be discovered by a male scientist who puts a new brain in her. Right? Of course, this is sci-fi for his own self-enjoyment because he was lonely on this compound. Right? as she gets older and wants to venture out, he wants to stop her, right? Because he doesn't want her to leave him. But it's natural, right? All humans want to venture out, right? In his own selfish way, he wanted to hold her to himself and make sure she was safe, right? Uh, but she wanted to spread her wings. It was only natural, right? God made us to go on our own individual journeys, right? And you can't get in the way of that. You can't get in the way of that with any of your kids, nobody, right? So he naturally wants to stop her. So he organizes a marriage to keep her from leaving. And this marriage was with a close friend of his, right? That way he can keep her on the compound and keep her in his eyesight, right? But she being a human, she wants to explore. So she leaves with another man behind his back, right? So, the scientist finally gets to the point where he realizes that it's natural for her to want to go, and for her to really learn, she must go, right? The woman must go. Just like the man, he gotta go, right? He gotta go on his own journey. The woman must go on her own journey. And although men are in fear of what could happen to her, even if you mean well, she's okay. She will be okay. And this is what the scientist said, right? He was in peace. He said, she gonna be okay. But so as she leaves with this man, right? This man he see her as a sex object, right? And he falls in love with her, and he wants to control her body, right? He wants to control that box, right? Uh, in this film, you see the pattern of the man, and even in society, the man wants to control the black hole, right? He wants to control the black hole, and as you see on the cover of the film, you see the black hole, which is, where all creation comes from, in darkness, right? So, all men are trying to control Bella through the black hole, right? And even in society, most of the domestic violence comes from the man wanting to control the woman. You know what I mean? Make sure she doesn't sleep with anybody, right? He don't care about he put up with a lot of shit she do, but if she sleep with somebody, that's a wrap, right? That's his box. That's his control. That's his black box, right? So, as she discovers, says she wants to eventually try sex with other partners, right? So even this partner decides to leave her on a ship, right? So she can't escape. And this is what this film deals with, right? He doesn't want her to get educated, right? Because as we said in my last video, education is power. As Bella becomes more educated, she becomes harder to control, right? So this whole film deals with the man wanting to control the woman. The man is the villain in this film because he wants to control the woman in a patriarchal mindset, and the woman, being Bella in this film, is trying to escape the patriarchal mindset. In the film, in the end, she finally realizes how patriarchal societies are set up, and she learns about philosophy and all this, and she becomes free, right? Um, so that was a great film. You should check it out. Again, it deals with the patriarchal prison. I didn't want to go too deep into it. But the film Barbie, who also won a lot of awards last year, also deal with Barbie wanting to escape the patriarchal prison, right? And she when she did get into patriarchal society, she realized that even Barbie Land is controlled at the top by men, right? That was the element there of a patriarchal society, and whether men understand it or not, we gotta keep in mind that we are looking through the world of a woman. A woman does not want to be controlled just as much as a man doesn't want to be controlled, right? But it's just normal that she is, right? So now let's get into the facts of women, right? We want to understand why does Doechii see men as such a threat? What does she know that we don't know, right? What does she know that we don't know? We are men, she's a woman, so let's deal with some stats, some facts that you can fact check yourself, right? In Saudi Arabia, women couldn't even drive until the year 2017. Women couldn't even drive, right? Femicide deaths in Mexico run rampant, right? These are hate crimes based on genders, a femicide, right? Women in Mexico State, which wraps around Mexico City on three sides, were already dying at a frightening pace. From January to November, there were 131 femicides, cases of women killed because of their gender. Did you hear what I said? The country saw more than 1,000 femicides last year, second to only Brazil and Latin America. On average, 10 women or girls are killed daily nationwide. Officials have recognized the femicide rate and violence against women as problematic for decades, yet little progress is evident in national data. Right? So although everybody knows women are being slaughtered all over the world daily, right? Nobody says nothing about it. Nobody fixes it, right? So I do want Doechii, like I said, I'm not the hugest Doechii fan, but I would love Doechii to make a song pertaining to this, because I feel like Eve had Love Is Blind. I feel like this group really needs it. Right now, it's 1 million black girls missing in America, right? The black woman is the number one woman, you know, when it comes to sex trafficking crimes, right? All women in general, but that's something that Doechii, being a black woman herself, could touch on, right? Go in more detail. Now let's keep looking at these stats. Several countries in the Middle East have morality police, right? We already talked about that, right? Where if the woman is not wearing a certain clothes which is deemed as moral, right? She can be in prison for that, right? She can be in prison for that. If her hair is not covered up, she can be in prison for that. That's why when Joe Biden was pulling out of Afghanistan, you see many of the Muslim women were trying to get on that plane because they did not want to stay with the Taliban. The Taliban come down with, so in America you have the hyper Christian nationalism. That's hyper, Islamic nationalism, right? And women become enslaved to that, right? Women become enslaved to that. And morality police have even killed women, right? So beat women to death, right? So I think it happened last year, if you want to look into it yourself, right? Now, in many parts of Africa and South Asia, girls are forced into marriage by the age of 12. Did you hear what I said? In Africa and South Asia and even parts of India, some girls as young as 12 are forced into marriages by grown men. This is a norm, right? Turkey has had a failure to protect women, right? So Turkey has a huge domestic violence issue also, right? In Afghanistan, girls cannot get education. Girls cannot get education, and education is a human basic right. So if you a man, imagine if you couldn't get education, right? Remember, you don't want anybody to be educated because education leads to power, right, and knowledge. So this is what happened to us during slavery, right? They wanted to keep the education away from you because you're easier to control, right? So women in parts of the world are still not even being educated because they're easy to control if the less they know, right? Salvadorian woman was jailed for decades for miscarriages, stillbirths, and warns the U.S. about abortion bans, right? Because we seen that with the hyper-Christian nationalism that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump bring, right? We see that they reverse Roe versus Wade. That's a war on women, right? That's a war on women's rights. 75% of sex trafficking victims are women, right? 28 million girls in India will become child brides in the next 2 decades, right? We're talking little girls. 48 rapes every hour, right? In the Congo, right? In the Congo, right? So that's at 48 every hour in the Congo. Think about that, yo. They have a thing called honor killings, right, in Pakistan, where if a woman is out of line, the man can literally slaughter her, right? This is a norm in certain places. 95% of women in Somalia face female genital mutilations, right? Genital mutilations. This is a real thing, right? Russia has a problem with domestic violence. It's an epidemic of domestic violence in Russia, right? So Russia has a huge misogyny element too, which, and so does this regime, which we have right now in office, which is Trump and the MAGA, right? They lock in with Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate uh, abuses women and talks negative towards women. That's how he got famous. That's his content. Dana White, has a reputation of hitting on women, right? I'm not gonna say that he does it all the time, but I don't know. But that was that was that was a big deal for him a couple years ago when he publicly smacked his wife, and both are embraced by the MAGA party, right? They are both embraced by the MAGA party, um, right? So the American woman we see has much more rights today than the women around the world. However, it was not always like that, and even to this day, you still seeing like with hip hop, women are dominating hip hop. We seen Snoop, right? The nerve of Snoop to come out and try to tell Cardi B that she need to change up her music because it's too sexual. When Snoop literally, his whole claim to fame for the most part is pimps up, hoes down type of mentality, right? Where he basically dogged out women, for decades while he had a wife. That was the norm, right? Walking women down the red carpet on leashes, right? Pimp, the pimp game. So studies show domestic violence impacts black women at a higher rate than any other race or ethnicity, right? That's what it says. Even black teenage domestic violence is a huge issue now. It's a huge issue now, domestic violence amongst black teenagers, right? So your little girl, my little girl, all our daughters, all our sisters, our cousins is even in danger just by dealing with men, right? They say 60% of women deaths yearly are caused by an intimate partner, right? Or somebody, a male in their family, right? So maybe Doechii knows these stats. Maybe Doechii knows these stats and she's afraid, right? She's afraid, right? So the Black Wall Street Chamber president became a victim of domestic violence herself, right? A couple years back by her husband. Metro Boomin, the legendary producer, his mom was killed by her husband, right? Last year, right? Ryan from the Ink Crew lost his sister and niece in a domestic violence issue. Jennifer Hudson's brother-in-law in 2008 murdered her whole family and the kids, right? We want to look at the conditioning, right? We want to look at the conditioning. So during the Vietnam War, right? During the Vietnam War, it was easier to kill your enemy if you defaced him, right? So they would call the Vietnamese gooks, right? And it will become an easier way to kill the enemy because you were calling him a gook, which made him seem like he was less human, right? And you got to think about hip hop, and I think about hip hop, and I think about Dolores Tucker when she was coming down on hip hop. Her main issue was that B word, right? That big. I don't know. I can't say too much on YouTube, but you get what I'm saying. And she always hated that word, right? She always hated that word. And if hip hop normalized calling black women the B word, right? Or all women the B word, how much? What if that was the same way of an American soldier in the Vietnam War calling the Vietnamese gooks, right? Looking down on them subconsciously, an easier way to slaughter them, right? To mistreat them, right? Now, if hip hop did the same thing with the B word, calling women the B word, you know what I mean? Wouldn't it make it easier? And it's been going on for 40 years to mistreat the woman, right? Just think about that, right? You defaced her. Too Short, Snoop, all the pimp rappers, right? Come from the pimp era, right? Reach back like a pimp, slap the hoe. So I grab a bit by weed, right? DMX said, if you got a daughter over the age of 15, you see what hip hop has its demons, right? Hip hop is the beautiful side, but it has its demons, which has led to a lot of this anti-woman rhetoric amongst itself. We got our own issues, right? I could go on forever, you know. I could go on forever, you know. Look at the Diddy case. Look what's going on with Diddy right now, right? Look what's going on with Diddy right now, exposing the culture. Look at Epstein. What's going on with Epstein? And you know what I mean? This is patriarchal society. I'm not saying all women is innocent. You know what I'm saying? I'm just giving you the mentality of, you know, let's call the boys, let's run a train. See what I'm saying? Just giving you the realities. It was a young sister that was shot and killed because allegedly she was on a date with her man and two dudes started flirting with her, leading to her death. Right? So, for a woman, sometimes you can't even curve it. You can't even tell a nigga, no, thank you. I don't want you. I got a man. That could lead to your death. Right? They got a show on YouTube called Viral Crimes where you just see so many sisters just being gunned down by their own men, right? You know, their own men, their husbands, you know? So, stalkers, right? It was Instagram models that was haunted by their stalkers, right? Um, this is the reality. This is the reality. I remember this before we slide. I remember the scene on Barbie. You know, it was so funny, right? When Barbie was coming out, the patriarchal societies was so mad that why y'all making a movie about Barbie? If you know it's gonna make men look, you know how weak of a man you is to be upset by women telling a story, right? You tell your story all the time, you know. Um, I remember when Trump said that no matter what, whether women like it or not, he gonna be their protector, right? Even though he have his own claims with women, right? He's saying, I don't care what women think. I'm gonna do what I think is best. He's the guy who already reversed Roe versus Wade, right? This is hyper Christian nationalism, right? Women don't know. Women don't know no better, so I can make their decisions. JD Vance, right? JD Vance, right? He believes that you should be able to hit your wife. He believes that childless women are an afterthought, right? They shouldn't even be able to vote, right? And you got to look at some of these passport boys types. JD Vance, old lady, come from India. I believe she come from India. So a lot of these brothers like to get the women from Asia and these countries, the passport boys, they don't like American women because they feel like American women were too liberated and were too educated. So they would go to countries, third world countries, to find women that you know didn't know better, or they were brainwashed to patriarchal societies, and they will let the man kind of do their thing. Man needs this validation, right? And man needs a validation. His ego needs it, right? The woman better not talk back. The woman better get in there and make me a sandwich. I think Candace Owens got a book called Make Me a Sandwich, right? Even though Candace, we don't even know if it's Candace do have this. Candace don't come off like a super feminine woman herself, right? She's outspoken, she's opinionated, right? But she's selling men this idea that women should be like this, and her whole show is based on her having opinions, so many opinions that it literally got her kicked off of the Daily Wire, which, I mean, I'm glad she spoke truth to power, but right, speaking truth to power is not necessarily a feminine aspect, right, for women. Women are supposed to, according to the patriarchal society, sit back and be quiet and let the man tell you what to do, right? But Candace Owens, she didn't like that herself, right? So she went on her own journey, right? And and it worked out for her, and I'm glad she got free from the Daily Wire, right? So this is something that we have to look at, right? We have to look at this type of stuff, the red pill mentality that is plaguing young black boys and young white kids in America, right? The MAGA movement, that's red pill. All that red pill, that Kevin Samuels, girl, you gonna die alone. You want a rich nigga? Why you want a rich nigga? You ain't nothing. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it might not be a reality, but she got the right to want who she want. You want who you want, even if it's unrealistic, right? So, um, to bring this home again, I'm more into the traditional family, right? However, I'm not closed-minded, and I have the right to, and I have learned to be objective. So, when Doechii says, when Doechii and other feminists, right? I think she's labeled a feminist, right? Or a woman says, I want to, I see men as antagonists in my worldview. If you know all these facts and these statistics, and you know, you understand why. You understand why she may feel like that. Yo, all the girls in the hood go to parties every weekend since they was 14, 15 with killers. Think about that. I did a thread on X about how many young black women die in nightclubs every weekend. And shootings that ain't got nothing to do with them. Right? Shootings that ain't got nothing to do with them. Just from being around these heterosexual, thugged out niggas off the masculine, can lead to their death. Right? Musclehead niggas, body slamming the wife, you know what I'm saying? You watch the news all the time, you see it, right? The husband just go crazy and take the whole house with him. So yes, the man is the protector and the provider and all that, but if he don't get his way, you know, he's the killer. He's the killer. You know? And I think that's what she was trying to get at, that the heterosexual man leads off the super ego. And the super ego is his downfall, right? You step on a nigga's shoe, he may shoot you. Right? He may shoot you. You look at a nigga too long, he may shoot you. Girls go to the gas pump and they harassed. Girls walk in the store, they get harassed. Right? Girls scared to pump gas now. So you have to see this, and when you have a daughter, you try to see things through her view, right? Being sexualized before she even know what it's about, right? It's you know, again, going to the gas station. It was a video where a sister in New York City was walking to the liquor store after work, and and a guy tried to holler at her. She said no, thank you, and they almost beat her to death, right? So the heterosexual man, especially the one who deals with the hypermasculinity, is a danger to the woman, because although he may be her protector, what happens when she makes him mad? What happens when he get upset, when he can't control her no more? Right? What happens when it don't go his way? The whole house may be in danger. This is what statistics is showing us. Right? So it's not for us to get in our feelings and be upset. It's for us as heterosexual men to try to rationalize with that information and be advocates for it, and try to understand what the woman is going through, right? Try to understand that, sister, you know, even in the Brenda's Got a Baby, not Brenda's Got a Baby part itself, right? But even while we on the subject, Brenda's Got a Baby, the ancestors must have just sent that to me, right? Because that was the wrong song. But Brenda's Got a Baby, who's the antagonist in that song, right? It's the man. It's the man who did Brenda dirty, right? On both sides. And then when you look at the song, the video, keep your head up, a woman walking down the street, niggas all out the car, yelling at her, you know, harassing her. So again, we see more of the insight of this whole thing was just to look at the view of from Doechii and women's perspective. And I think that if you are open-minded and objective, I think that you have been able to see a little bit of the way that women may view the world, and why men are seen as the antagonists in their worldview, right? The heterosexual man. Most of the mass shooters, heterosexual men who couldn't get women. And when they can't get women, everybody's at risk. Everybody must go. So yeah, this ain't the cut down man. I am a heterosexual man, and I love women, and I love women enough to try to see, and I love myself enough to want to not just want to hear what I want to hear. I want to hear things that make me think, and I want to hear things that I may say, well, I might have been opposed to that view originally, but now I got new information, and I can sit with it and view it, and from that now I see your perspective. And that's how we grow in knowledge, right? We don't grow in knowledge by hearing things that we already know and things that we already agree with. We learn the knowledge by seeing new perspectives, sitting with it, dealing with it, open minded, and then going from there, right? So when I originally said this on X, brothers attacked me. And I understand that um because in the pro black conscious movement is still a religious element to it. Even though many of them bang on religion, the ones that are not in religious groups, they still have a religious element to them, right? Like spirituality still has for example, Dr. Umar uh, loved pushing spirituality, and he also loved pushing polygamy, right? But he only if the man is the one with all the women. If it's reversed, she's wrong. Same way that Brother Polite felt, and we seen how Brother Polite ended up violating women, right? So this notion of the man above the woman, even if it's subconsciously, it's has led to um, dark places for women, and now I think many women view men as especially heterosexual macho men, you know what I'm saying? Niggas who wear the extra thugged out on their sleeve, even if they, for some women, young girls like that, but then some of them, they have a bad experience. They scared of them niggas. Even to the point where it's so deep subconsciously that when the studs try to put on the subconscious role of a thug nigga and they get with a girl, they abusive too because they believe that this is what a man supposed to do. The man supposed to be masculine and abusive and dominate the woman. You understand? So on that note, you know what I'm saying? I think I've laid out my argument enough, right, to see where Doechii is coming from, right? And that's not for me to decide for how you feel, right? I just gave you a perspective of her argument. And on that note, you know what I'm saying? You take it and do what you will with it. But you did leave with some new information. I hope so. If not, I appreciate you for even showing up and taking the time. One last thing before we bounce, I wanted to hit you with another element of one of the greatest psychological films, right? And that's the film Full Metal Jacket, right? So these Vietnam soldiers who are ruled by the ego, right? If you follow my ex, you know that I always talk about the penis and the gun and the penis. These are two things that men use as a ego boost to conquer, right? To conquer. The gun and the penis is made to conquer. They both, they both are inside the waist area, right? You used to see all the thugs like pot, throw the gun in the jeans, right? And it like pot, like Nas would say in the song, I gave you power, right? I bust off. The gun bust off. It's saying go next to the penis and it busts off when a man wants to conquer power, right? So this gun that thugs carry and military soldiers carry as they go conquer for power, right? For power over other people, over other groups, right? Um, it's also an ego thing also. So when you look at the film Full Metal Jacket, and the drill sergeant is teaching them that the gun is it is is your penis. While you here, it's your lover. You know, it's you gotta have it. Gotta have it. This is symbolic for how the military masculine thug nigga sees uh the gun, the of a tool of power. He also uses the penis as a tool of power. Right? The thug in the streets, he ain't got no money, but that's what the girls say, yo, that nigga with no job, he the nigga breaking my back. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing he holding value, right? I ain't got no money, but I can lay the pipe down. Can I stay? You feel me? But in the sense of, with the gun, I can go rob a store. I can jack a nigga. See what I'm saying? And the military soldiers does this also. In the film Full Metal Jacket, on the second half of the film, the unit is they buying a prostitute, right? And the prostitute is a young girl, and they all pay, to have their way with her. They pay to have their way with her, right? This is a gang. You see what I'm saying? They running the train. They don't, in so many words, they run a train on her. They take turns. They have their way with this teenage girl, right? And later on in the film, as the unit is attacked, right, by a sniper, sniping them off one by one, one by one, catching them all as they close in on where the sniper is located at, right? When they get up on her, they realize that the sniper is a 14-year-old girl from Vietnam, right? This was Kubrick giving you poetic justice, right? The Vietnamese women were done terribly bad. I'll let you do your own knowledge by some of the American soldiers during the Vietnam War. They had their way with the women, even the young girls, right? So in this film, the sniper that's taking them out, taking the soldiers out, taking the men out who rule and conquer with their guns and their penises, for their ego, she taking them out. It's a 14-year-old sniper taking them out, and it's a girl. You see how it works? That's poetic justice in the film. So I wanted to leave you on that note with the gun and the penis, and even in the film Full Metal Jacket, right? The sniper, who was originally seen as the antagonist, ends up being the protagonist, right? And she's sniping the soldiers who invaded her land, right? So the male is the antagonist from her perspective. And by her taking them out one by one, the men who conquer with their guns and their penises on her land, invading, right? Just like Doechii, she sees them as the antagonists, the villains. On that note, we out, family. Peace.